53 years. Good morning and happy Monday. Today, as I mentioned yesterday, today it marks the 53rd anniversary of when St. Constance and I first started living together. She flew out from Nebraska on this day in 1967, and we started setting up housekeeping together. So it's a fond memory. We celebrate the official wedding on November 9th, but we're greedy, so we celebrate both days. Now we're on another installment, another forward to the 2007 edition of The Eye in the Triangle, Israel Regardie's definitive work on Aleister Crowley. And this is from the 2017 New Falcon Publications edition. And it starts off with an epigram quote from Israel Regardie. Crowley once said that if a man wanted to begin the study of magic because he wished to evoke a demon to kill his enemy, that would be all right too. For the student would soon discover the hierarchical structure of the world of magic. That is to say, the demon in question could not be controlled or ordered until the student had made contact with the entity immediately superior. And this entity would only be beseeched to function in terms of his superior, and so on. Very shortly, then, the student would be constrained to invoke in a direct line the God or spiritual force ruling over all such operations. In that case, he would have to unite his consciousness with that of the God. By that time, so many transformations in consciousness would have taken place that the original malefic intent would have disappeared and been replaced by more worthy and higher aspirations. I never met Aleister Crowley. He died 7 months and 11 days before I was born. No, I do not believe I am Aleister Crowley. I've never entertained the fantasy that I am or was Aleister Crowley. In fact, since earliest childhood, I've been haunted by rather clear memory visions of who I probably was in at least one previous incarnation. And I assure you, none of these memories have anything to do with Aleister Crowley or indeed any person of legendary or notable historical significance. Over the past 40 years, however, because of my dubious reputation as some kind of magical authority, I've been contacted by a fair number of individuals who have informed me with straight-faced earnestness they are the living incarnation of Aleister Crowley, the Beast 666, and that I must immediately write a book recognizing them as such. They proffer abundant evidence, Kabbalistic synchronicities, birth dates, addresses, telephone numbers, recurring dreams of wild orgies, and shopping receipts totaling $6.66. When I first met Dr. Francis Israel Regardie in 1976, we discovered we both had quite a collection of such colorful contacts. We swapped a couple accounts and then resolved then and there it'd be great fun to pool our Crowley incarnation stories and letters in a book that we would title Lieber Nuts, N-U-T-Z. We were both half serious about the project, and in the years that followed, he would occasionally call and send me out to investigate another neighborhood Crowley manifestation. Predictably, the whimsical project never manifested. Regardie died in 1985, and with him, Lieber Nuts. No matter what you may have read to the contrary on the internet, I was not Regardie's magical apprentice, nor was I his formal student. I was never personally initiated by him into any kind of Golden Dawn or AA or OTO or anything. I can, however, proudly and with no small measure of awe and humility, claim him as one of my earliest and most influential magical mentors. He made himself available whenever I had specific questions about magic and Crowley, and he was generous with his time, information, and opinions. He was also supportive of our OTO lodge in Newport Beach, and donated duplicate books from his own substantial library and other magical trinkets. Before I met him, however, he was in my mind at least an unapproachable god, a mysterious mythological character straight out of the distant legendary past, like Merlin or John Dee or Cagliostro or Woodman and Westcott and Mathers and Aleister Crowley. In 1972, Constance gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. And that's Jean-Paul. I hope he's watching. And the DuQuettes were magically transformed from a young hippie couple to a family. It was also the year I abandoned a drug-energized decade of dangerously successful work as a musician and recording artist, and pretentiously began my holy grail quest for respectability and stability. 45 years later, I must sadly confess, I'm still failing spectacularly in this quest. However, during that youthful transition period, I did discover something even more precious than the poisonous anesthesia of American middle-class predictability. I found magic and the works of Edward Alexander Aleister Crowley. As any magician will tell you, magic isn't anything like most people think it is. In fact, magic isn't anything like anyone thinks it is. Magic stops being magic when someone can explain it to you. And the magic stops being magic when you think you can explain it to others. It's a real paradox. And it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a paradox. It's all very Zen. Still, for some of us, we are irresistibly drawn to the art form of magic. And make no mistake, magic is a most colorful and powerful spiritual art form. Not because we believe it is the only path to enlightenment, or even that it's a good one, but because something magical already bubbling away inside us tells us it's our path. In 1928, a 20-year-old, wow. In 1928, a 20-year-old British-born American art student, Francis Israel Regardie, later Regardie, was snared by this attraction and bravely abandoned his privileged family home in Washington, D.C., and set sail for Paris to become a live-in disciple of the notorious Aleister Crowley, self-proclaimed world teacher and prophet of the new aeon. As the reader will soon discover, the eye in the triangle is Regardie's extended commentary on his years with the great beast and the life and works of his infamous former employer. Moreover, the book is an attempt at an insightful, if not completely objective analysis of the psychological processes that cause Crowley to tick so particularly. Excuse me, tick so peculiarly. At the same time, Regardie's observations might also give us some insight as to what might have been making Regardie tick so peculiarly. You may find much in The Eye in the Triangle that is dated by today's psychologically sophisticated standards. Jung is no longer so new and daring, and as far as sexual matters goes, there is very little that today unsettles us in the least. In the mid-70s, when I first read The Eye in the Triangle, it was the only proper biography of Crowley available. John Simon's 1951 laughably bad The Great Beast and Crowley's own Confessions of Aleister Crowley, wonderful but hardly complete or objective, were pretty much the only things I could get my hands on. Things are mercifully better now for students of today. And Dr. Richard Kaczynski's. Richard, I hope you're watching, because I'm plugging your excellent, perfect, best biography of Crowley, Perdurabo, The Life of Aleister Crowley by Dr. Richard Kaczynski. It will likely remain the most complete, accurate, and objective Crowley biography for many years to come. As an apologist for Crowley, Regardie must be given high marks for rising above the cruel, small, and nasty injuries Crowley inflicted upon him as a young man in the years following their association. I believe it was not easy for him to do this. I don't believe he did it as some form of 12-step forgiveness gesture to make himself feel better in his final years. Rather, I simply believe he came to a place in his life where he could put the entire wonderful and painful experience in perspective. He recognized that the brilliance of Crowley's genius transcended and eclipsed his myriad and serious human flaws. He recognized it was his duty to mankind, his duty to the advancement of human thought, to allow the world to see the blazing sun of Crowley's genius and the soul-liberating message he tried to deliver. Obviously, I'm a very big admirer of Crowley and his work. This is due in large part to Dr. Regardie in his various works on the subject of magic. I sing Crowley's praises a lot. I write books that are extended commentaries on Crowley's works. He constantly amazes me and inspires me. He is my holy prophet. On the other hand, in reading Crowley, I will run across something he said or wrote sometime during his 72 incredible years that shocks me, disgusts me, that outrages me. And I know for certain that I would not have liked Aleister Crowley on a personal level. We would not have gotten on. In that respect, I'm glad he's dead. But Crowley was a genius. Have you ever been unlucky enough to spend time in close proximity to a real over-the-top bona fide genius for any length of time? An artist, a writer, a filmmaker, a dancer, a mathematician? I have. It's hard. It's frustrating. Sometimes it's even dangerous. Not because the genius is trying to be rude or thoughtless or arrogant. To we mortals, it may seem like the genius is behaving like an insane jerk. But the genius, more often than not, is completely oblivious or unconcerned to the effects he or she has on others. It's because the art of the genius is the soul of the genius. The body, the mind, the personality, the character, the appetites, the dreams, the hopes, the fears are only servants to their art. And God help anyone or anything that gets in the way of the genius and his art. Crowley was a genius, and his body of work is a masterpiece. Just as real a masterpiece as a Beethoven symphony or a painting by Da Vinci or a work by Michelangelo. It's true, Aleister Crowley had many monstrous shortcomings, but so did Beethoven. Da Vinci and Michelangelo, they were all mad as hatters. They still created immortal, consciousness elevating works. Through their genius, they manifested truth, and truth is bigger than any fragile and illusionary personality. It took Regardie many years to put behind him the stings of personal injuries he had suffered from Crowley's pen point. But he eventually did. And we are all enriched by his act of posthumous magnanimity. The image of the eye in the triangle is, of course, it has many magical and mystical connotations. It's certainly a profound and appropriate title for Regardie's treatment of the life and works of Aleister Crowley. I believe, however, it also represented the opening of Regardie's own eye to the spiritual significance of Crowley's contribution to the evolution of human consciousness, and to the importance of his own vital role and responsibility in presenting it to the world. And now I don't wish to take the reader's more of the reader's time with these introductory words. So I would like to close with something that I wrote over 30 years ago for my own amusement and for the amusement of my friends and colleagues who knew and loved Dr. Francis Israel Regardie. I'll have to explain. Shortly after Regardie died in 1985, testimonials poured in to the handful of occult and metaphysical themed publications. Most of these in memoriams had one thing in common. They nearly all spent a great deal of the article telling the reader how much Regardie admired and respected them. I was embarrassed and somewhat ashamed of my magical colleagues for their tasteless exploitation of the moment. So I wrote a parody under a magical nom de plume, mocking their self-serving articles. I prevailed upon a sympathetic editor of a prominent esoteric magazine of the day, who was kind enough to publish it. If you think it sounds ridiculous and absurd, believe me, it's not nearly as ridiculous and absurd as some of the real in memoriams published after his death. This silly little parody is my most sincere thank you gift to Regardie. My way of telling him how much I truly loved, respected, and admired him. I know he would be laughing the loudest. And here's the article. It's titled, Israel Regarde, his favorite student, remembers. By Frater Stonehenge Equinox, as told to Lon Milo DuQuette. It wasn't long after Israel Regarde met me that his health began to fail. Even though we met in person only twice, I still managed to have a profound effect upon his life. They say you never have a second chance to make a good first impression, and if I say so myself, Regarde's first impression of me was a lasting one. At the time, I did not know his address, so I staked out his post office box in Studio City. After 3 days, he finally arrived to pick up his mail. He almost missed his chance to meet me, for at last I had fallen asleep on the sidewalk near the newspaper racks in front of the building. Destiny, however, could not be thwarted, and the gods guided his tiny footsteps to tread upon my left hand and forearm. Luckily, he was not hurt badly in the fall, and as I helped him gather his mail from the gutter, I seized the opportunity to introduce myself. Equinox is my name, Stonehenge Equinox. You're the reason I'm into magic. He responded with an astounding display of mental telepathy. I don't suppose you're insured? He asked, not concealing the fact that he already knew the answer. I followed him to his car, where I displayed my tattoos and treated him to an impromptu performance of my original diagonal pillar ritual. He feigned disinterest, but I could tell he was favorably impressed. Great magicians don't need words to communicate with each other, and so I was not surprised to see him speed off in his car without uttering a sound, although he did gesture. Our next meeting was more mystical and intimate. As Providence ordained, I found his phone number scrawled on the restroom wall at the Bodhi Tree bookstore in West Hollywood, and immediately gave him a call. Playfully disguising my voice, I told him I'd thrown my back out and made an appointment for a chiropractic adjustment. There's no question that the man was omniscient, but he seemed genuinely surprised to see me when I and my then-girlfriend Diana Ishtar Sophia Morgana appeared at his door. The dear man asked if I had come for the spinal adjustment and voiced his delight that I had brought someone to help me home. What a saint. And you know, he was right. After his treatment, I was unable to walk for 3 weeks. Thus began a 5-year odyssey of intense spiritual correspondence. Every Friday, I mailed him my magical record, dream diary, semen sigils, and excerpts from my still unpublished novel, Sex Wizards of Phlegm. Each week, like clockwork, my letters and package were returned to me seemingly unopened and unedited. However, to a trained clairvoyant such as myself, adept in traveling in the spirit vision, these silent messages were a treasure chest of deeply personal magical instruction and encouragement. Each page dripped with his energy and were all alive with psychically transmitted practical advice, initiatory ordeals, and occult secrets. It was in this manner that he consecrated me Psychopomp of North Hollywood. Then, shortly before his death, he chose to abandon our astral correspondence and communicate to me on the material plane by actually writing me a letter. It was in this last letter that he poignantly revealed his deep personal affection for me by beginning his message by addressing me as dear, unquote. It was also in this letter that he revealed the mystic precognition of his own impending death. After advising me on matters of mental health, personal hygiene, and the proper use of the English language, he closed with these chillingly prophetic words. Quote, "It will not be necessary for you to ever contact me again." I hope you enjoyed that little parody there, or spoof, or whatever that's called. Tomorrow, we'll pick it up again tomorrow at the same time. I think tomorrow will be a little bit shorter than today. Until then, I hope you enjoy your week. Have a good, safe week. And be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.